Today we're diving headfirst into the wild world of one of the biggest names in the game, Nike. We're not just talking about shoes and logos here. We're peeling back the layers to uncover some really juicy scandals that have rocked the giant brand to its core.
Nike. Nike. That's a Nike shoe with the sign of Satan on the top called Satan shoes.
Get out of here. There's got to be more to this.
I saw it before the show. So you can't have the Betsy Ross flag.
Yeah.
Come on, you can have Nike-made Satan shoes.
Oh my God, Lil Nas X. So let's get real for a second. Nike's been under fire for some pretty heavy stuff, from accusations of exploiting child labor in sweatshops to outsourcing production to places like China, where regulations are, let's just say a little bit loose. And if that wasn't enough, they've even dipped their toes into the occult with those infamous Nike Satan shoes.
Lil Nas X causes uproar over shoes that contain a drop of real human blood. The so-called Satan shoes are to promote his newly released music video. Each shoe features a Bible scripture and upside-down cross.
I mean, you heard that right. You all remember this. We're talking about a collaboration that stirred up a whole heap of controversy in both the sneaker world and the religious community. Now, here's the big question. Do we just shrug off these shady moves in the name of snagging up the latest kicks? Or do we start asking some serious questions about the moral compass of a corporate giant like Nike? Well, we're about to dig deep into the messy world of corporate responsibility like never before. But before we get into that, let's rewind and talk about where it all began for Nike. It all starts with the man himself, Phil Knight. Phil Knight jolted awake in a cold sweat, wondering what the heck he's doing with his life. You know, the whole existential crisis deal, the meaning of life, his purpose in this world, all of that jazz. So what's a guy to do when he's feeling lost and confused? Well, he decides to hit the books and heads off to the University of Oregon, where he dives headfirst into journalism and his love for running. Now, here's where things get interesting. Phil ends up crossing paths with his legendary track coach, Bill Bowerman, who's trained Olympic athletes and knows his stuff. And wouldn't you know it, they hit it off big time. Phil starts training under Bowerman as a middle distance runner, and before you know it, they're practically joined at the hip. They became best buddies. And little did they know that this camaraderie, this friendship that they shared, was about to change the game in a big, big way.
You somehow connected with your coach. Tell us that story, because he was special to you.
He was and really still is, even though he's been deceased for, I think, 17 years. But he was a very unique human being. He was, first of all, in my view, the greatest track coach that ever lived.
Okay, so let's fast forward to 1959. Phil's got himself a shiny new journalism degree, but he's still feeling pretty lost. Despite being a talented runner back in the day, I mean, he received 3 varsity awards during his running career in college, but he's now realizing that his Olympic dreams are pretty much shot. So what does he do? Well, he joins the army, thinking maybe that'll give him some direction. And spoiler alert, it doesn't. In fact, he's left feeling even more frustrated than before, and he's kind of now developing anger and resentment. But then a glimmer of hope. Phil heads back to school, and this time to Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. And let me tell you, that decision that Phil made was very life-changing. One of his professors assigned a class project to come up with a killer business concept. And Phil, well, he knocked it out of the park with this wild idea. And it was, what if Japanese sports shoes could take on the big dogs and dominate the market? And at the time, the dominating shoemaker were Germans. And most people thought that Phil was nuts, and that basically his idea was stupid. But Phil, he saw potential, and he was ready to make it happen.
The theory that I'd written a paper for at Stanford Business School, that Japanese track shoes should be able to to compete in the international market, which was being dominated by German shoes, which, why would you make them in Germany?
All right, so picture this. Phil's fresh out of college in 1962, feeling a bit lost and crashing on his parents' couch. Sound familiar? Yeah, I mean, some of us have been there. But Phil, he's not about to let life pass him by. He's ready to take control and really make something of himself. I mean, he had been working on himself for so long now. He didn't have an option to fail. And here, now this is where things start to get a little wild. Phil got this crazy idea to bring Japanese shoes to America. So what does he do? He hops on a plane and heads straight to Japan. I mean, talk about, diving head first. I mean, he's really dedicated to this idea. And while he's there, fate decides to lend a hand. And Phil stumbles upon these kicks called Onitsuka's tiger shoes. And well, let's just say it was love at first sight. So Phil, being Phil, decides to shoot a shot and arranges a meeting with the bigwigs at Onitsuka. And keep in mind, this dude's got zero experience in distribution and no contacts in the business.
And so when I went to Japan, I went in a sporting goods store. Then the Onitsuka company had made a shoe called, the brand called Tiger, which seemed to have the most promise. So I called him up.
And he pitches himself as the guy who's going to crack open the American market for these Japanese shoes. And you know what? They bought it. They liked him. The Onitsuka executives were impressed by Phil's hustle and then decided to take a chance on him. But here's the kicker. When they ask him the name of his company, Phil freezes. He's about to get busted for not having one. He's not affiliated to any company. In fact, he was unemployed. So he does what any self-respecting entrepreneur would do. He makes one up on the spot. Blue Ribbon Sports. He says it with all the confidence in the world. And wouldn't you know it, they fall for it.
Here I was, 24 years old and real shy. And I got to go sell them on exporting some shoes to me. And so they walk through the accounting department before you get to the conference room. And there were 20 Japanese people in the accounting department, and they all stood up and bowed. And I thought, oh boy, they think I'm a big shot. And yeah, and I had my one suit and tie on.
Now Phil is armed with his newfound confidence and a little white lie. So Phil's off to the races, and he asks Onitsuka to send him some shoe samples back home in America. And they agree, and just like that, Phil's on his way back home to the States, ready to kickstart his grand plan. If you're digging the stuff that I'm putting out and want to help fuel the fire for more awesome discussions and juicy topics, please consider hopping on board the Patreon train with me. As a patron, you'll score some sweet perks like exclusive interviews, Q&A sessions, there's a hotline that you can call and leave me a voicemail, and a bunch of other goodies you wouldn't find anywhere else. Plus, you'll be directly contributing to the cause, helping me keep the content train chugging along. Your support means that I can keep doing what I love, researching, creating, editing, and sharing content that gets you thinking. So if you're ready to take our relationship to the next level and snag some epic extras along the way, head on over to my Patreon page and let's make some magic happen together. I can't wait to see you there. So at this point, Phil's back home and he's sitting around twiddling his thumbs, waiting for those dang shoe samples promised by Onitsuka. And 4 months have gone by and still nothing. He's scratching his head, wondering what happened. I mean, the meeting with those Japanese shoe bigwigs went smoother than silk. So he decides to shoot them a letter, and he says, "Hey, where are the shoes that I ordered?" And now here's the kicker too, that Phil shelled out $50 for these samples. And let me tell you, back in 1959, based on inflation, that's like dropping over $500 today. And for a broke college graduate, that's no chump change. So you can imagine Phil's frustration when weeks go by and still there's no sign of these shoes. And at this point, he's really starting to lose hope, thinking that maybe he just got scammed. But then one day, a big old package shows up at his doorstep, and it's the samples. Finally. So Phil's over the moon, like a kid on Christmas morning. I mean, he was ecstatic. And talk about a roller coaster of emotions. I mean, 1 minute, he's bummed out and working some boring accounting job. And then the next, he's back in the game with a box full of potential. And, life's really funny that way. It's very unpredictable. So Phil's bursting with excitement, clutching his brand spanking new Japanese running shoes. And he's itching to show them off to Coach Bill Bowerman, of course. Now, Bowerman's not your average track coach. He's like a shoe savant. Back in the day when Phil was still hitting the books in Bowerman's class, this dude, Bowerman, would dissect shoes. He would dissect students' shoes like a mad scientist. And I'm talking cutting them open, messing with the materials inside, and turning them into these like running marvels, like these shoes perfected for running. So Phil's standing there wide-eyed, watching Bowerman do his thing. And let me tell you, Phil is impressed. Bowerman gives those Japanese shoes the nod of approval and then drops a bombshell. He wants in on Phil's shoe game. I mean, talk about a plot twist here. With Bowerman on board, they sealed a deal, each tossing in $500 to kickstart their venture. And with that cash, they snag 300 pairs of shoes from Japan for a steal. Because, I mean, that was just a little over, that would be $3.33 for each pair of shoes. And just like that, Blue Ribbon Sports is off to the races. Now, Phil's got these killer shoes, a powerhouse partner in Bowerman, and a whole lot of hustle. But here's the catch. There's nowhere to sell them. Phil hits up every single sporting goods store, every shoe store in town, hoping that they'll bite, hoping that they'll want this awesome shoe that he believes in. But, they're like, nah, we're good. So what's a guy to do? No one wants his shoe. So Phil rolled up his sleeves and he hit the streets and becomes the ultimate shoe hustler. And that, my friends, is how Phil Knight became a legend in the shoe game.
To have a total and complete passion, because there's going to be so many dark moments. I think the dark moments are true for any entrepreneur or any startup company.
Okay, so Phil's got his hands on 300 pairs of these Japanese shoes, and he's ready to make some moves. So he hits the streets, popping up at track meets and running clubs, selling shoes straight out of the trunk of his car. And you won't believe it, but selling these shoes was a breeze compared to his past sales gigs. Back then, he didn't believe in what he was selling, but he really believed in his shoe and the passion. You could see it in his eyes. People were digging Phil's, enthusiasm for these shoes, and the sales started reflecting that. They started soaring. And by the end of the year, he's raked in $8,000 in revenue. And it's not too shabby, especially considering that $8,000 back then, accounting for inflation, would now be equivalent to $79,000 in present time. So with that cash, Phil doubles down, ordering 900 more pairs and pushing Blue Ribbon Sports to new heights. He brings on a crew of commission-based sales reps, mostly former runners, who take the brand to high school and college track meets across the country. And before you know it, Blue Ribbon's blowing up. So thanks to their success, they score a bank loan, an upgrade from Phil's parents' basement to their first real office, and they bring on their first full-time employee, Jeff Johnson, who actually later on coins the name Nike. Sales are through the roof, and in 1966, they opened their very own brick-and-mortar retail store, becoming a hotspot for runners to hang out and geek out over shoes. While Phil and Johnson handle the business side of things, Coach Bowerman's busy cooking up fresh designs and coaching up-and-coming runners. The guy even wrote a best-selling book that helped spread the jogging craze and just helped boost more shoe sales. By 1969, Blue Ribbon's Cortez shoes are flying off the shelves, pulling in a cool $300,000 in revenue. And the company is essentially, they're on fire. They're riding high under a partnership with Onitsuka. But little does Phil know, trouble is brewing on the horizon. Phil's got big dreams for Blue Ribbon Sports, but Onitsuka's not exactly rolling out the red carpet for them. And you know, when Phil had a meeting with them and he asked him for exclusive rights to distribute the Tiger shoes nationwide, but Onitsuka was not having it. They just felt that Blue Ribbons wasn't big enough to represent them nationwide. But Phil was not about to back down. He spins a tale about these fancy East Coast offices that they totally don't have. And boom, deal sealed, and he's got 20,000 more pairs on the way. Another little white lie here from Phil to these nice Japanese people. But here's the kicker. Phil's now has to come up with the cash for these mystical imaginary offices that he lied about that he has in the East Coast. And let's just say investors aren't exactly knocking on his door. In a Hail Mary move, the parents of one of Phil's early hires pitch in their life savings. Talk about a leap of faith here, right? But this is exactly what Phil needed at the time.
We pushed the envelope pretty hard since we got kicked out of two banks for being too aggressive.
Despite this financial roller coaster, Blue Ribbons were on the up and up, riding high on the Onitsuka wave. But little does Phil know, though, that Onitsuka's been playing the field, sniffing out new distributors on the down low. And when Phil catches wind of their shady moves, it's game on. Onitsuka drops a bombshell. Either Phil sells off a majority stake in Blue Ribbon, or they're gone. But Phil's not about to hand over the reins. He's gearing up for a showdown, ready to take on whatever Onitsuka throws his way. And Phil and Bowerman at this point are faced with a major plot twist when Onitsuka pulls the rug from under them. But instead of wallowing in defeat, they see it more as a golden opportunity to finally blaze their own trail. And thus, Nike is born. With a fresh new name and a logo locked in, Blue Ribbon takes the leap into producing their own shoes, completely cutting ties with Onitsuka once and for all. But sourcing top-notch manufacturers to make the shoes turned out to be a little trickier than Phil and Bowerman initially may have expected. And the first batch of prototypes had a lot of issues. At this point, the morale was really low between sales reps and different people that were working for Phil at the time for Nike, this budding new company. So Phil starts to get scared that people might start leaving him. So he lays it all out on the table, and it's now or never, basically, to make Nike a force to be reckoned with. And sure, Phil knew that there were hurdles ahead, but Phil's not one to back down from a challenge. So he rallies the team together for a meeting for an epic pep talk. And he's declaring this moment as their chance to break free from Onitsuka's grip and forge their own path to greatness. And boy, does the team truly rise to the occasion, because they felt really electrified knowing that Phil was willing to push forward and continue growing and expanding Nike as a business. And with newfound determination, they dive headfirst into making Nike a household name. No more playing second fiddle to someone else's brand. This was their chance to shine.
So it was a special team.
So it worked, and it was a special team. That was one of the reasons. I wanted, people in the sneaker business know Phil Knight. They don't know those other four people, and they should.
But Phil's not about to repeat past mistakes. Instead of putting all their eggs in one manufacturing basket, he sets up a network of partners, giving Nike full control over production. And when push comes to shove in a legal showdown with Onitsuka, Phil stands his ground, leading to parting ways officially and legally. In 1971, Blue Ribbon Sports officially becomes Nike, and the rest, as they say, is history. From humble beginnings to dominating the global sports scene, Phil's bold decisions and relentless drive have made Nike the powerhouse that it is today. And the best part, they may just be getting started. You know those iconic moments when your favorite celebrity rocks a killer pair of kicks? Well, chances are they're sporting Nikes. From the red carpet to the stage and everywhere in between, Nike has been the go-to choice for the rich and the famous. Let's start with the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. And speaking of music legends, who could forget Kanye West? Whether he's dropping beats or dropping jaws, you can bet he's laced up in some fresh Nikes. But it's not just musicians strutting their stuff in Nikes. Hollywood A-listers like Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence have been spotted rocking the swoosh on and off set. And let's not forget about athletes. After all, Nike was born on the track. From LeBron James to Colin Kaepernick, Serena Williams, some of the biggest names in sports wear Nikes. And this is no surprise, even political heavyweights like Barack Obama have been known to kick back in a pair of Air Force Ones. And when it comes to fashion icons, look no further than the Kardashian-Jenner clan. Whether they're hitting the streets or the runway, you can bet they're wearing Nike. So next time you're lacing up your favorite pair of sneakers, just remember that you're in good company. I mean, after all, if Nikes are good enough for the stars, they're definitely good enough for us. Or are they? Now let's talk about Satan. The year is 2021, and the internet is about to explode with the arrival of the most controversial shoes known to mankind. The Satan shoes. And who's behind this devilish creation, you ask? Well, it's none other than the rapper Lil Nas X and the crafty crew at Mischief. A bunch of, they're like Brooklyn-based artists that are known basically for stirring up trouble. And now we're not talking your everyday sneaker here. These shoes were straight out of the darkest nightmares. They were decked out with pentagrams, inverted crosses, and even a hint of a biblical verses that would make your grandma faint. But hold on to your hats. The real kicker is they supposedly had a drop of human blood in them.
Because you know how many of them there are being made? How many of the shoes are being made?
She said 650.
666.
Oh, of course.
Of course.
You gotta be kidding me.
I'm not kidding.
It's a little weird.
Look it up.
It's a little odd.
When up is down and down is up, and that's exactly where we are as a culture.
Released alongside Lil Nas X's music video for Montero, where he literally slides down to hell on a stripper pole. And I kid you not, it's really quite disturbing. But these Satan shoes, they set the internet on fire, and they were limited to just 666 pairs, each tagged with a price tag of $1,018. And the crazy part is that they vanished faster than you can say sold out. But as they say, all good things must come to an end, especially when you've got a big corporation like Nike breathing down your neck. They weren't too thrilled about their brand cozying up to the devil, so they lawyered up and slapped Mischief with a lawsuit faster than you can say legal drama. But amidst all of the chaos, Mischief stood their ground, claiming the shoes were just a cheeky commentary on the crazy world of brand collaborations. And Lil Nas X, well, I mean, he wasn't about to back down either, firing back at critics and defending his right to express himself however he wanted. And I do believe in freedom of speech and in freedom of expression, so I can't say that he's wrong. Do I agree? Well, that's a different story. But, in the end, in this story, Nike got their way, and Mischief had to offer refunds to anyone that felt, like spooked out by their purchase. But hey, at least they went out with a bang, leaving behind a legacy that'll go down in sneaker folklore. And as for Lil Nas X, well, let's just say that he kept on strutting his stuff. And just a couple of years later, he repented and converted to Christianity. And now I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't this the same guy who released the Satan shoes and literally gave the devil a lap dance in his music video? Well, you're not wrong, but it looks like Lil Nas X is doing a complete 180 and embracing his spiritual side. And let me tell you, the internet is shook. It all started with a series of cryptic tweets from Lil Nas X hinting at a major life change, and fans were scratching their heads trying to decode his messages, when suddenly he dropped the bombshell. He's found God. Lil Nas X went from twerking with the devil to singing hymns with the choir. Oh man, it sounds kind of familiar. A lot of interesting, not mentally sane characters have gone down the same road. And if you thought that this transformation couldn't get any more surprising, just wait till you hear how he's been spreading the good word. Instead of dropping bangers about love and heartbreaks, he's been hitting us with verses straight from the Bible. And I'm talking about tweets filled with scriptures and messages of redemption, leaving fans really shooketh to their core. I don't think that that's his, essential, classic demographic. He's probably freaking his fan base out. So what do you think? Is Lil Nas X truly a Christian, or is he a lying, money-grubbing clown? Nike, the mega corporation, we've all seen plastered across billboards and basketball courts. They stand accused of some pretty serious shady business practices. And we're talking about them turning a blind eye to sweatshops and workers' rights abuses in East Asia. I mean, it's pretty heavy stuff. It all started innocently enough with Nike moving their production overseas to cut costs. Not sure how innocent that is, but as they chased cheaper labor, they ended up in countries like Indonesia and Vietnam, where labor laws were basically non-existent and wages were dirt cheap. And that's when things got messy. Reports starting popping up about workers slaving away in sweatshop conditions for next to nothing. And we're talking about long hours, low pay, in downright awful working conditions. But did Nike step up and fix things? No, they did not. They just tried to brush it off as if it didn't happen, saying that they just had little control over their subcontracted factories. But I mean, come on, when you're pulling in billions of dollars, you can't just wash your hands of the whole thing. I mean, the backlash was swift, and with protests and calls for boycotts popping up left and right, college campuses became hotbeds for activism, with students demanding that their schools cut ties with Nike, at least until they cleaned up their act. Nike tried to save face with some half-hearted promises that they were going to do better. But let's be real, actions speak louder than words. And until they actually start putting their money where their mouth is, it's really tough to take them at their word. So the next time you lace up those Nike kicks or throw on that swoosh emblazoned hoodie, just remember, there's a whole lot more to that logo than meets the eye. And it's up to us to hold them accountable and demand better. And as we wrap this roller coaster ride through Nike's ethical minefield, It's pretty clear that there are no easy answers when it comes to supporting a company with such a checkered past. While Nike may offer stylish shoes and cutting edge gear, it's essential to weigh the moral implications of where our dollars are going. And I personally don't wear Nike shoes. I don't own any Nike gear at all. And I know some people come at all of this with a Christian perspective. And I think that that would mean that supporting a company like Nike really raises some serious questions about justice, um, compassion, and stewardship. The Bible teaches us to treat others with fairness and dignity, especially the most vulnerable among us. So it's tough to square that with supporting a company that turns a blind eye to exploitation and abuse. And ultimately, it's up to each one of us to do our homework and to listen to our hearts and make informed decisions about where we spend our hard-earned cash. And maybe, just maybe, if we raise our voices loud enough, we can push Nike and other corporations like them, Apple, perhaps, to do better by the people who make their success possible. If you found this discussion thought-provoking and insightful, don't forget to like this video and share with others who might benefit from this conversation. For more content exploring a wide range of topics, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to me. And remember that your voice matters. So let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. I want to hear what you guys have to say, so please share your thoughts, any questions, and suggestions for future topics. And I will also be selecting 3 random comments from this video, and I will answer those questions that you may have. And I will read those on the next video. So if you want to be featured on the next one, please leave a comment below and I may pick yours at random. Thank you guys very much. Let's keep striving for a better world, and I'll see you on the next video.